Today, we review the Yokomo YZ-2. Let's get going. Hey everybody, Jason here. I'm back, and today we're going to do the review on the Yokomo YZ-2. This buggy is really like the AstroTurf assassin, and if you ask me, it was probably designed to win the Worlds at Yokomo here last year. But before we get on with the unboxing and the review, I just want to take a second and say thanks to our friends over at A-Main. A-Main actually sent this kit for review, and I appreciate it a bunch, and I hope you guys appreciate it. This is really one of those cars that you're about to find out in this review that I like this car a lot, but it really wasn't a car that I had ever intended to buy with my own money. If you've watched any of my reviews, you probably already know that I tend to buy cars that have a lot of local support, and Yokomo just doesn't have a tremendous amount of local support, although you can get everything obviously from A-Main. Anyways, I had people asking from the UK, Australia, New Zealand, the United States, all over the world had been asking for this review, and people wanted to know, like, will it only work on AstroTurf? Will it only work on super high grip, or can it be made to work on lower grip or clay surfaces as well? And we're going to answer all that in the review. But anyways, I just want to take a second and say I'm stoked that A-Main was willing to provide the kit. I'm stoked that I got a chance to do this review for you guys, and who knows, maybe there'll be like a giveaway or something in the future. Anyways, that's that. Let's get this thing out of the box, and then we'll take you over the bench and show you my personal car. Okay, I just got this in the mail. Let's crack it open. As you can see, it's still sealed up and everything. So we'll go ahead and see if we can cut that nice brand new seal. Is there anything else on the edges? Nope, doesn't look like there is. So that's that. Let's unbox this Yokomo YZ-2. Alright, so I guess we'll just start with whatever's on top, right? Looks like here's all the shocks and stuff like that. Looks like the shock bodies have a really nice coating on them, whatever it is. I'm not sure yet. Looks like there's some green paint on the rear springs and some yellow paint on the front springs. Comes with yellow front and rear wheels. This looks like school bus yellow. This doesn't actually look like the proper fluorescent yellow, so I'm really not sure. 2 wings. That's always nice that when these kits come with, spares. So there's 2 different wings here. Got bearings. Looks like a camber link mount, and what do we got here? Maybe a front tower, some steering parts, bulkhead. Front bulkhead's aluminum. That's really nice. I really like this body. I just think that this thing's really cool. Obviously, the new AE body that they ran at the Worlds is very similar. Looks like it's set up so that you could run the transmission on either side, if I had to guess. So, or no, maybe not. Maybe it just has to be run on one side, but it's nice that it looks symmetrical. Some foam strips, battery strap, front, rear brace for the motor, or waterfall, whatever you want to call it. Gear diff with 3,000 weight diff oil. Shock towers, front and rear shock towers, wing mounts, some extra pieces. Here we've got front arms. This looks like some inserts for the steering blocks. What do we got here? Looks like this thing might actually have custom, kind of like the Hot Bodies 8-scale cars or something like that. It looks like these are custom Ackerman pieces. That's my guess. And I don't know if you guys can see this, but each little item says that it's packed by. And this one's packed by Kimura. So if there's any parts missing Kimura, it's on you. I highly, highly doubt that's the case. Transmission case. Obviously, this car is really well known for its lay-down transmission. Aluminum motor plate. And you guys can probably see that it's got that nice chamfer. They've anodized it, then remachined it. Ball cups and turnbuckles. Nothing special here. These look like they're just good old-fashioned plain black steel with plastic ball cups. Here we've got, looks like some tools, antenna tube, servo arms, things like that. Nothing super fancy. The side rails for the kit. Some screws. The rear arms and suspension mounts and hinge pins, and looks like inserts to control the geometry. This is hexes, rear hubs. They look to be plastic, drive shafts, and spacers and things like that. The chassis, right? It's got some relief in it. In fact, I'll tell you what, let's pull this out just so you guys can see this real quick. Give you guys a little bit better view. So that's the chassis. I'm not sure what kind of anodizing it is, but I want to show you a little feature here. If you see this right here, see how this hole right here is actually elongated? If you've ever put a car together, you go to put the screws in the bottom of the chassis and then they don't fit, it's a nightmare. But this makes it really easy because it's always going to fit. So this is such, I've seen this on one other car, I think it was the 3 Racing Cactus, and that is such an awesome feature. So that's the chassis. Looks like we have some shock oil, 300 CST, 400 CST, and of course, last but not least, the manual itself, and that's where we're at with the manual. So, all right, that's what you get when you unbox a Yokomo YZ-2. Let's get building. Okay, this is my YZ-2. I pulled the wheels and tires off so you guys could get a little bit better look at the suspension. We'll pull the body off. In my opinion, this is really the best looking body that comes in the kit for any two-wheel there is. I just think this is a really sleek looking body, and whoever drew this up, man, I am stoked. What a good looking body. So let's start off in the front of the car, and I'll take you through basically what I have in here. This is a ProTech 160T. This is an LRP Flowworks team, and of course an antennaless RX482 Airtronics receiver. This is one of the new ProTech Shorty batteries, and this thing's pretty dialed. It's actually got 5mm bullets. This is a SureSpeed 17.5. I actually ran the car with a couple other motors, including a Reedy modified motor. I believe it's 3169 at the moment, and there's a ball diff in here. And one little thing that you probably can't see by looking right here is that I actually have this transmission and everything shimmed up 1mm at the time at the moment. McCune Design makes this awesome kit. They actually make a separate battery strap because this one, sometimes when you do like a pretty bad lawn dart, this battery strap will actually pop out. So McCune makes a battery strap that actually clamps on to this waterfall here. But so normally I run the McCune battery strap. There's McCune shims raising the transmission, and then this is a ball diff. And obviously you can see we have the shocks on the back of the tower. At some point I may actually use the correct spacer, but I was at OCRC when I switched everything around and didn't have the spacer with me, so that's why it is the way it is. But the car has actually been really good exactly the way you see it. So that's my car. Let's get on with the rest of the review. Overall, the build on the Yokomo Buggy went really good. When I first pulled this manual out of the box, I was like, oh, this is going to be a little bit sketchy because it actually looks pretty much like something that was printed on like a Xerox machine or whatever. But the instructions are really good. In fact, I'll show you a couple of close-ups of some of the pages in the manual, but overall, the instructions were really good. The fit and finish on this buggy was pretty amazing. The quality of the materials, the fitment, just there are so many things. It was just a good build experience. That's all I can say, a very good build experience. And of course, we got to give Yokomo a few brownie points because they included basically, I know this is not a big deal, but when I see things like this is actually the turnbuckle wrench. It looks just like one of the high-end aluminum turnbuckle wrenches from the people over at Lunsford. When you see little things like this, it just shows that there's a big attention to detail. It's just impressive. You know, in some ways, I think there are things in this buggy that are borderline overkill when it comes to engineering. In the back, the transmission, when you bolt it down to the actual chassis, they actually put like these rubber vibration dampening pads underneath the whole rear transmission assembly, and I would say that's probably overkill. But overall, for me, I thought the manual was well written. I thought the fit and finish of all the parts was top notch, and overall my build experience went very good. Okay, let's talk performance. There are really 3 aspects to the performance of any of these vehicles. It's really jumping and landing, acceleration, and then cornering, right? Well, this car is kind of getting a pass in this review because this car, in my opinion, it really wasn't designed for the types of surfaces that we run here in the United States. This thing pretty much has like a 60-40 weight balance, and that's pretty aggressive. That's a lot of weight over the front end. And so out of the box, the car comes a little bit softer than I think most of us run our cars here in the United States. And I think the reason it's softer is to get the weight to transfer forward and back, right? You have to be able to get weight over that rear end because it's only carrying 60% of the vehicle's weight. But I digress. Long story short is, the jumping was very good. The car was easy to control in the air, had a very good attitude. Its landing could have been better simply for the fact that it's a little bit soft. Now, acceleration. This is something that's kind of a double-edged sword. When you start putting hotter motors in this car just does not develop the forward grip that you would want, especially if it's like a medium grip type of a surface. Like if the track grip is way up, then of course the car develops enough forward bite to get the job done. Long story short, I would say that the jumping and landing, good, not great. Acceleration, it's fair. It's fair if the traction's low. And of course, I ended up adding a ball diff, which we'll talk a little bit more later. But the real strength to this car is its corner speed. This car carries probably, in my opinion, more corner speed than any of the other mid-motor platforms out there. But there's a caveat, right? All that corner speed, you've got to be very careful, and the car's got to be set up just right. Like, you have to have it right in the window for this thing to be absolutely dialed. But when you actually get a setup that works really good for the track you're on, this car generates a tremendous amount of corner speed, no doubt, because it's carrying so much weight over the front end. So overall, let's do a quick recap. Jumping, very good. Landing, I'm sure we could make it better by stiffening up the shock package, but that may end up hurting handling and grip on lower bite surfaces. Corner speed was pretty much amazing. And then the forward bite issue, I've seen a lot of guys race this car in a lot of different classes, and the guys that tend to find success with this car in, like, say, modified, for instance, on medium or medium high grip surfaces, tend to put a bunch of weight underneath the transmission. They run a pretty soft shock package in the rear and a stiffer spring up front. So anyways, long story short, that's what we have for handling. Jumping and landing, acceleration, corner speed. Okay, now that we've talked performance, you guys kind of know how I feel. Let me tell you about some of the changes I made. This is kind of a different segment, and I'm going to add one more segment later on, like likes and dislikes, but let's just get on with it. Basically, I ended up making about 5 changes to this car in total. So over the course of running it, basically, I moved the shocks to the back of the tower. I added a ball diff. I ended up shimming the transmission up with spacers from McCune Racing. That's an old trick we used to do with the YZ-2 buggies. I added a little bit of weight underneath the battery. McCune also sells like a 25-gram plate to go underneath the battery. And last but not least, I put the softest spring I could find. I put an associated black rear spring on the car. And at the end of the day, that seemed to be a setup that had good steering and good grip all through a range of conditions at my local home track for racing stock. I ended up playing around racing the car in mod, and when the grip was up, the car was really good, but when the grip would go down, it was really still a handful for me to hang on to with the changes I just presented to you guys. So those are the 5 changes that I made that got the car that really brought the car up to a pace and a comfort level that I really liked. All right, this is a new segment called Likes and Dislikes. Normally I cover all the stuff in the conclusion, and maybe I'll end up repeating myself. We'll have to see how the video edit goes. But there were really 3 things that stood out for things that I really liked about this car. The kit quality, the build quality, and the quality of materials was very, very good. The body is epic. I think it's the best looking body that comes in any of the 2-wheel kits. And the car is really super light, and that's really cool. So many of us spend tons of money in the stock class to make our cars super light, and this car comes light right out of the box. So, I mean, just saves you all the money that you would have spent trying to make everything light. So, kit quality, really cool body, and of course the car is super light. Those are my likes. Okay, now that I've shared a few things that I really like about the car, let me share a few things I think could be better. One, it'd be nice if the car generated a little bit more forward bite. And from what I've heard, Yokomo is working on a dirt version of this car, so I'm sure they're already aware of it. The second thing is, it'd be nice if this thing had a 3-gear. I know that a lot of times the 4-gear can create more shift and theoretically more forward bite, but the 3-gear transmissions just make the cars so much more stable under braking. I think that would be huge. The one more thing, or I guess the third thing, is the servo horn. I was actually at a race in Chico, and a guy up there stripped out his servo horn, but this car uses a really long servo horn, and so you can't just grab a servo horn from, like, say, a B5 or an RB6 or a 22. It just isn't long enough. You won't get full throw, and so the car will steer more to one direction than the other, and so it's kind of a pain in the butt, but I'm sure that has a lot to do with steering geometry. Just not a big fan of that super long servo horn. And last but not least, it'd be nice to see Yokomo make a big effort or a big push to get more team drivers and get a stronger support network here in the United States. So those are the things I liked. There's a few things I think could be better. Let's move on. Okay, let's talk durability. Now, when I was racing the car, I literally had some pretty gnarly hits, some collisions with the pipes and other cars, and I never broke anything. When I put a mod motor in the car and tried it out at my home track on a couple of different occasions, I cased a couple of pretty big triples, and everything still seems to be in pretty good shape. But I will tell you that after talking to other guys that have raced this car for a long period of time, there are some issues that come up. The chassis, one of the strengths of this car is that it's super light right out of the box. I mean, ready to go, this car, there's a good chance that if you were to build one right now, it would be between, I don't know, 1,450 and 1,480 grams ready to go, which is underweight, by the way, right? 1,499 is minimum weight. But I've had a few different guys report that the chassis can get tweaked up near the front. I've had a couple guys tell me that they broke the front top deck. And if you pay attention to any of the Yokomo forums, it looks like at some point or another they've had some issues with possibly having air bubbles in the arms and things like that. Now, obviously I didn't snap my arm in half to find out if there's air bubbles in it, but it is, I think it's just, I just want to be straight up with you guys. I haven't had any issues, and I have had some pretty gnarly crashes, but I wouldn't call this car super durable by any means, but that's kind of the nature of the beast. If you want a super light race car, I don't think you're always going to end up with the most durable race car, right? So I would say for me personally, the durability has been good, but you might want to do a little bit of homework if you run at a track that's super high speed or has some pretty big gnarly jumps. Okay, let's talk value. If you've ever watched any of my videos, you know that value is really a double-edged sword, right? There's the metal and plastic that you get in the box, and then the other side is basically the global experience that the company provides through its online presence and setup sheets and distribution network and driver network. I would say that for the most part, what you get in the box, it's a great value. For $329, you get a lot of car for your money. The flip side is they really don't have a very strong presence for driver network, setup sheets, online presence, and distribution here in the US. So I would say value is good, especially what you get in the box, but we can't say that it's great because they just don't have that other side really mastered yet. Okay, let's talk conclusion for the Yokomo YZ-2. It's a nice kit. It's a high quality kit that built well. I really feel like here in the United States, the car excels really more in the stock classes due to its lack of forward bite. But it's kind of interesting, right? This car with some changes, ball diff, changing the shocks around, adding some weight, playing around with shimming the transmission and whatnot, it can be made to work really, really well on our medium to higher grip clay surfaces, even though it was designed specifically with AstroTurf in mind. Word on the street is that they're actually working on a dirt version right now, so who knows? Who knows what we'll see here in the future from Yokomo. My guess is that they'll probably modify the rear end to add a little bit of rear bite. But long story short, it's like this. If you like running something a little bit different, you don't mind the lack of parts support locally, and you're willing to make some changes, the Yokomo YZ-2 is a really good car that can perform well and generates a ton of corner speed. Now, on the other hand, if you like having lots of local drivers running what you're running, you like having a huge support network, and you just want to buy a car and run it as close as you can to like an out-of-the-box setup, well, then you might be better off with one of the other bigger brands, the B5M Lite or 22 3.0 or maybe like an RB6, right? So that's about it. It's been a fun review. I'm stoked you guys watched. Thanks to A-Main and everybody else that made this review possible, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. I just want to say thanks again for watching my videos. I appreciate you guys watching. If you enjoyed this video, you'd be doing me a huge favor if you could either like, comment, or even better, subscribe. Again, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.